Strap into your seats and get ready. It's time for the Mortarpod.
Hey everybody, Alex from SeemsGoodMagic.com here, and welcome to this week's episode of the Mortarpod, your weekly video podcast for completely custom Magic the Gathering sets based on movies, TV shows, books, all sorts of fiction works, and a lot of sets have already been made, but still so many to explore, which has been a lot of fun, and I love putting my time into this and getting input from people. So this week, we're doing a Tim Burton classic. This is probably, I think as one commenter put, this is when Tim Burton was still good. I don't want to completely discount him, but there's definitely been some terrible Tim Burton movies made. But this one is good, and just a magnificent performance. Well, by like everybody in it. There's actually quite a few stars in it, but Beetlejuice, played by Michael Keaton. So Beetlejuice is a really interesting movie, and it eventually spawned into a cartoon, which is also kind of strange. But in essence, the movie follows Alec Baldwin and Geena Davis, a couple known as the Maitlands, and they've just moved to a new small town, and they're going across a bridge, and they end up dying. They end up falling off the bridge into the water and dying. And it's sort of the couple's experience with death, and you learn what the afterlife is really like, and all sorts of kind of, in a way, almost kind of depressing stuff happens because they lose their home they just bought, and time starts moving at a different rate, and eventually they encounter Beetlejuice, played by Michael Keaton, who is sort of a freelance, like, bio-exorcist is what he calls himself. But he's telling them that he knows how to scare these people out of their house, because even though Alec Baldwin and Geena Davis are dead, they still want the new occupants of their home out of there. So anyway, let's jump into the cards. That's essentially the plot of Beetlejuice, as strange as that is. But let's start off with Beetlejuice, as mentioned, played by Michael Keaton, who just did a really awesome performance too. But yeah, Beetlejuice is a ghost, and you don't know what he says that is truth and what he says that is a lie. So it's hard to know exactly what is truth about him. The only sort of true information you get about him is from Juno the Caseworker, which is a card that's coming up eventually. But when Geena Davis and Alec Baldwin die, they encounter Juno the Caseworker, who used to have an assistant who worked for her, and that was Beetlejuice. And she said he cannot be trusted. So Beetlejuice is kind of like a devious ghost, and he has a lot of powers. He has some pretty incredible powers, but the only way that he can have power is by if you say his name 3 times. And he can't tell you his name too, which is also really strange. So he can't tell you his name, but if you figure out his name via clues, then he can, and he can't write it down for you either. He can show you, he basically can play charades to have you figure out his name. But if you say his name 3 times, then he really has a lot of power. So let's go through his card. Beetlejuice, and you can see it's spelled weird. It's not spelled like the insect and juice. The actual spelling of his name is Betelgeuse. So very weird spelling. He's 2 black and 2 red for a 3/3 legendary spirit wizard creature. And he's got 3 abilities. He's a mythic. So he's got 2 red, target creature can't block this turn. 2 black, Beetlejuice becomes a 5/6 black snake creature with death touch until end of turn, which he does do in the movie. He does turn into a big snake at one point. And finally, he's got 2 colorless. Beetlejuice gets +1/+1 until end of turn. If this is the 3rd time this ability has resolved this turn, exile Beetlejuice, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Any player may activate this ability. So he can sort of be temporarily exiled by using that ability 3 times, much like saying his name 3 times. So overall, I think he's a pretty powerful card. 4 mana 3/3 that's pretty color intensive is not great, but the fact that he can turn off blockers, he can become a 5/6 death touch, which is a really good body, and you can even pump him too. So I think he's definitely worthy of Mythic. He's got some pretty powerful abilities at his disposal. Next we have Lydia Dietz, played by a very young Winona Ryder. This is probably one of her breakout roles, if not her breakout role. And she's kind of a weird gothic kid in the movie, and she happens to be the daughter of the people that moved into Gina Davidson and Alec Baldwin's house after they've died. And what's interesting about her is she's able to see ghosts and spirits. Because she's an unusual person. And the reason that we, the audience, know that is when the couple, the Maitlands, die, they get a book called Handbook for the Recently Deceased. And I made a card for that too. But all sorts of information about the afterlife is contained in that book. And Lydia does some reading on it, and figures out that because she's strange and unusual, that somehow gives her the ability to see, spirits in the ghost world. So Lydia is 1 colorless, a white, and a blue for a 2/2 legendary human creature. She's a rare. She has spirit creatures you control get +1/+0. And then she has 1 and a white, target spirit creature you control gains 1st strike until end of turn. And then 1 and a blue, target spirit creature gets -1/-0 until end of turn. So her abilities are sort of, because she wants to help Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin, the Maitlands, she wants to help them. So she's able to give them 1st strike in a way because she's sort of making their appearance, their existence known. And she can also weaken spirits because she's their only link to actual interaction with real people. So Lydia is a very cool character in the movie, and great performance by Winona Ryder, of course. Moving on, we've got the Handbook for the Recently Deceased. So this is what I was talking about. This is the book that you get, apparently, as soon as you die. So I made it an equipment card. It's 3 colorless uncommon equipment. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to equipped creature by spirit creatures. And then equipped creature has 2 and tap. Target spirit creature gets -3/-0 until end of turn. And then it costs 3 to equip. So a bit clunky, but I would say in a spirit set, a pretty strong equipment card to have for sure. Next we have the Sandworm. And I think a lot of people remember this from the movie. It was some pretty cool looking claymation, I believe, on the Sandworm. But something I picked up when making this set was apparently the Sandworms are on Saturn. I don't know if you guys knew that, but there's even some dialogue that Beetlejuice says in the movie that sort of indicates that the Sandworms are on Saturn. It's very strange. But I actually put it in the flavor text. So it says, look, this is Beetlejuice talking. Look, you've been to Saturn. Hey, I've been to Saturn. Whoa, sandworms. You hate them, right? I hate them myself. So oddly enough, when the Maitlands try and leave their home, after returning home from dying as, ghosts, they go back to their house. And then if they try and leave their house, it apparently transports them to Saturn where all these sandworms are at. And the sandworms somehow are able to kill the ghosts. So I don't know exactly how that works, but the weird and twisted mind of Tim Burton never ceases to amaze. So the Sandworm is 4 colorless and 2 black for a 5/5 uncommon worm creature. And whenever Sandworm becomes blocked, defending player discards a card. So Pretty powerful black creature. 6 mana 5/5 is not too terribly inefficient for black, and that's a pretty good, I would say a pretty good ability for black as well. When it becomes blocked, they have to discard a card, certainly motivating them to not want to block. All right, next we have Juno the Caseworker, played by, well, a woman I don't know, actually, but she did a great job. So Juno the Caseworker is sort of helping the Maitlands, now that they're dead, kind of, adjust to a life, an eternity as a ghost. And keep in mind, ghosts are spirits in the magic world, so that's the creature type we are using. But Juno the Caseworker is 1 colorless, a white, and 2 blue for a 1/2 mythic spirit advisor creature. And then you pay a white and a blue and tap 2 untapped spirit creatures you control, and you get to draw 3 cards. So essentially you have to tap 3 spirits you control, and then you can draw 3 cards, which is certainly a powerful effect. But Arcanus the Omnipotent was sort of what I based her off of. And I always thought Arcanus was a really sweet card. He's a 6 mana legend that just taps and lets you draw 3 cards. So this is a cheaper one, but more color intensive, weaker power and toughness. But it also lets you draw 3 cards, but it has more, it's harder to activate. You need 3 spirit creatures to do it. Next we have the Maitland Haunting. Now this is another one of those iconic scenes from the movie. So the name of the people that have moved into the Maitland's house are the Dietzes, and they're really like sort of, what's the word? Pretentious, sort of postmodern, sort of gross artistic people. At least the wife is. The dad actually seems like a pretty normal guy, but Delia Dietz is the mom, and she's very artsy fartsy, sort of really gross kind of person. So she of course has some very gross, artistic, overly artsy rich friends as well. And she invites them all to dinner because I think it's to show her sculptures, because she does art. And that's when the Maitlands first do their haunting, which is they figure out how to sort of possess the people and scare them a little bit. But unfortunately, their plan backfires on them, because although they do scare temporarily the people eating dinner, it just makes the people eating dinner want to come back and experience more, ghostly encounters. But the Maitland Haunting is an uncommon card. It's 4 colorless and 2 black sorcery. Creatures your opponents control get -2/-2 until end of turn. So I always like the idea of one-sided sweepers, but I feel like this one is appropriately costed, being both 6 mana and a sorcery to get that effect. But still, a pretty powerful uncommon nonetheless. Okay, next we have Otho's Seance. So Otho is sort of an interior designer, paranormal expert in quotations. That's a friend of Delia. And Otho eventually ends up in finding the handbook for the recently deceased and stealing it. So that's what I wanted in Otho's Seance to portray. So Otho steals the book and actually holds a seance using the book as sort of his relic to connect with the ghost world. So Otho's Seance is 2 colorless and 2 red for an aura. It's an enchant artifact. You control enchanted artifact, and at the beginning of your upkeep, enchanted artifact deals 1 damage to its owner. So it's kind of like a red enslave for artifacts, and certainly a powerful effect in a heavy artifact set. But this one only has the 1 artifact, the Handbook, which is why I wanted this card to exist. So next, Otho manages to hold an exorcism where he brings the Maitlands back in ghostly form that they can observe, which is very strange. And they begin rapidly aging, which is also very creepy. But I have a card that represents that in Bioexorcism. So Bioexorcism is 1 colorless, a black, and a green. It's a uncommon sorcery. Exile target creature card from your graveyard. put a black spirit creature token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that creature, it has whenever this creature blocks or becomes blocked, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So, pretty interesting res effect, I thought. Res effects are typically 4 to 5 mana nowadays. Back in the day, you would have saw stuff like Animate Dead, or even Reanimate, which was 1 mana. But those proved to be too powerful because you have effects that are able to, mill your library into your graveyard, thereby putting like a 10 drop in your graveyard, and then for 1 mana you could bring it back. So it was discovered that there were just sort of very dirty, cheap ways to get back creatures from your graveyard, which is why resurrection effects have gone up in converted mana costs. This one is cheap by those standards since it's only 3 mana, but the drawback is you only get it until it blocks or becomes blocked once, and then you have to sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. And it only puts a copy of that creature out, a token copy, so bounce effects would still kill the creature. But overall, I don't think this card's broken. I actually think this would be a pretty cool, sort of fun card to see in Standard. All right, moving on. We have Conjure Spirit. So they need Beetlejuice's help again. Otho has began to exercise the Maitlands, and they're starting to get very hurt, even though they're dead already. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but apparently exercising ghosts can kill them even further. There's death for the dead, according to the movie. So Lydia, wanting to help her friends, does summon Beetlejuice again, and that's what I've made with this next card called Conjure Spirit. So Conjure Spirit is 3 colorless, a green and a blue. It's a rare sorcery. Look at the top 10 cards of your library. You may put a spirit creature card from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So sort of like a summoning trap, but 1 mana cheaper. It's also a bit more color intensive and it's blue. And you can only put spirit creatures out, but you get to look at the top 10. So some similarities, some differences to summoning trap. But there's certainly some powerful spirit creatures out there. This one, of course, aimed at cheating out Beetlejuice, but there are certainly other spirits that may be worthwhile to cheat out from your deck. And I don't think it's overpowered. I'm not sure there's spirits that are extremely overpowered. Okay. Finally, we have Delia's Sculpture. So, as I mentioned, Delia does some very tacky-looking, postmodern, garbagey art. And the sculpture ends up getting reanimated by Beetlejuice in that final hurrah when he comes back. And Delia's Sculpture is 3 colorless. It's an artifact, an uncommon. It has 3 and tap target creature, and it has 5. Delia's Sculpture becomes a 3/3 construct artifact creature until end of turn. I actually think this would be a pretty highly playable limited card, since it would allow you to, end of your opponent's turn, tap a blocker they have, untap, turn it into a 3/3, and attack with it. So, pretty cool ability matchup, I think, actually, and probably a pretty good limited card. Though a bit clunky, but still, it seems like a good utility card to have. Okay, that's my Beetlejuice set. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you're digging the Fate Reforged drafts. Dragons of Tarkir is right on the horizon, so I'm excited to do some drafting for that. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next week.